Hi everybody, Jeff Potts here, and it's time for another Tech Talk Live. This is number 54. So I don't know, when we get to like 75 or something, we'll have to have some sort of party to celebrate that. So we're getting there. It's amazing how many of these we've had. Today we are talking about share configuration and extension points. And this is a cool topic, and just based on the interest that this usually draws at DevCon and in the forums and things like this, this should be very valuable content. Before we get going, I have a couple of things to mention. First, we are recording the session, so don't say anything that could be used later against you in a legal proceeding. And we will make this recording available to you later, as well as these slides. The second thing, just a short plug, is you should have seen that the announcement that DevCon will be in Berlin, November 5th, 6th, and 7th of this year, and in San Jose, California, November 13, 14, and 15. So, you know, I'm looking at some of the attendees here. I see many people who I know would be great to give talks at DevCon. You have another 2.5 weeks to get that proposal in. So May 19th, somewhere around there, is the last day that we will accept speaking proposals for DevCon. So please get those in. All right, speaking of speakers at DevCon, Dave Draper is here with us today. Dave, are you ready to go? Why don't you introduce yourself, and I don't even know what your official title is.
I don't know either. Everyone in Alfresco seems to make up their own title, so I just consider myself a UI engineer. Keep it simple.
All right, good. I like that.
Yeah. So thanks, Jeff. A little bit of introduction about me. So my name is David Draper. I've been working for Alfresco now since August 2010. I've been involved in the team, Share 4.0 and Cloud beta work. And under sort of in the background, one of my main responsibilities has been looking after the Spring Surf framework, which I sort of do with Kevin Roast, who's the UI team manager. So as Jeff said, today I'm going to be talking about some new extension points in Share. Now, I just want to clarify that these are actually generic WebScript and Surf extension points. During the development for Alfresco 4.0, there was a sort of twin two double path approach where Mike Hatfield was working on some specific customization options just for the document library, and I'm not going to be covering those today. This is we're going to be covering more generic Spring Surf and WebScript related extension points, which are sort of pervasive throughout the whole of the Share application. Okay, so it's a little bit of background. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but when Share was originally written, it wasn't really intended as a platform. It was more intended purely as an application. But over time, there was obviously a great deal of interest in people putting their own spin on it, changing certain things. And so there was an increased drive to actually allow people to customize it. And underneath the covers, Share is driven by Spring Surf, which is a framework that we've built on top of the Spring MVC framework, and which we actually pushed out to the Spring repository. So even though it's Spring Surf, it's actually entirely written and maintained by Alfresco.
What is the Dave? I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is the status of the Spring Surf project as it relates?
Well, we could have a whole different session on that, but basically, development is ongoing, is continuously ongoing. But what's not happening is because it's not really been popular outside of Alfresco to be used independently. We haven't been pushing any updates onto the main sites. There are continuous updates which are going into Alfresco releases, but nothing that's actually being pushed externally at the moment. We are looking at the various options. At DevCon last year, I boldly announced that we were going to bring SpringSerf back into Alfresco, and there's been some toing and froing over that decision, and we still haven't decided what we're going to do. The one thing that would probably please people to know is that if we do bring it back into the Alfresco SVN, effectively what we'd be doing is just forking it and just continuing development internally, but we wouldn't change all the names. We don't see any reason to cause people to go back through the same level of pain that they had to go through when we originally renamed all the packages when it went out to Spring. So even if it did come back in, it would stay with the Spring package structure. So that's kind of where we are. So there is development ongoing, but it's sort of going on behind the scenes, really. But hopefully you'll have seen, or people will be aware of the blogs that myself and various other people put out onto the Alfresco blog site. So you should be able to see that there is a development that's going on.
Cool.
Okay. So yeah, if anyone does have any questions, just general Spring 7, it's a good plug for the forums. I know that Jeff's done some reorganization of the forum topics, but I think the Surf one is still there, isn't it, Jeff? Or it might just be Surf and Web Scripts now. I can't remember what it's called. But if you do,
I think I jammed the Surf and the Share stuff together.
Okay.
I'll go look at that real quick, but I think I put it together.
Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions that do relate to Surf, I'd recommend you post them there. And I've got a subscription to all the sort of key forums. So if I will try and answer your questions, and if I don't get there in time, someone else normally does. So if anything's not that I haven't covered or you want more detail on, then definitely post questions on the forum. Right. So I'm off the first slide. Right. So the last piece of background is that when we were doing this work for 4.0. It was hard. We didn't exactly know what the common use cases were. As I said, we knew that a lot of people wanted to do specific things with the document library, which was what Mike Hatfield addressed. But we knew we wanted to have a generic approach to making it easier to customize and share. So these were roughly our goals. We knew we had to make sure that SpringSerf was going to be compatible with all the previous releases. Because Surf the Surf code is on a separate SVN branch from the Alfresco code, it means that any changes we make typically have to can get pushed back into earlier releases. So we had to make sure that we didn't want to branch Surf. We wanted to keep a single trunk moving forward. So we knew it had to be backwards compatible. And because 4.0 was very much about stability and making it all more robust, we didn't really want to rewrite Share, but we knew we wanted to make it simpler for people to customize Share without needing to do the copy and pasting of WebScript code. And in case you're not familiar, the previous approach to customization was simply to identify the WebScript that you wanted to make a small change to, and actually take a complete copy of all the WebScript files and move them under the web extension tree structure, and I'll show you where that is shortly, and then make your changes into that code. And the obvious problem with that is that as soon as you do that, you're out of sync with any changes that come from Alfresco, and you suddenly give yourself a maintenance problem of having to keep everything in step. So what we wanted to do is to avoid people needing to do that, but still be able to make the changes. And we also wanted to make it possible to change or to provide these extensions via simple jar deployment. Again, we didn't want people to have to start poking around in the exploded war structure of Share. So before I go on to sort of talk about what there is now, I just want to talk a little bit just to say that this is an ongoing effort. We haven't got to where we've got, and we don't want to leave it. There are some limitations that are in 4.0 in terms of customizing how your client-side JavaScript widgets are instantiated, and we're aware that there's issues with consistency in our web scripts. So we want to switch everything to start using a boilerplate approach, and we want to start moving dependencies out of the head files so that we can actually remove them completely and switch off the double pass processing of web scripts to improve the overall performance of Share. So to cover what it was that we did, because again we weren't exactly sure of the use cases. There was a lot of discussion about how we were going to solve this problem, and we were slightly hamstrung in that we knew we couldn't make a lot of changes to Share, and it had to be done at the surf level. So we took two different approaches to solving this problem. The first was actually to allow users to customize by targeting files within packages. And also we wanted to allow users to customize through the component configuration in Surf. So component is obviously a massively overloaded term, but when I use component here with the big C, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about Surf component configuration objects. So in Surf you have the concept of you have a page, and then within a page is mapped to a template, and the template can contain multiple regions, and each region can be bound to a single component. So we wanted to introduce the idea of being able to dynamically change the component bindings, and because we were stuck with a one-to-one mapping of regions to components, and because we knew we had to keep everything backwards compatible, we introduced the concept of subcomponents to enable us to bind more web scripts effectively into a region. So there's a one-to-one mapping between a region and a component, and in pre-4.0 you find that each component is typically rendered by a single web script. So this allowed us to get more content into each region if we needed to. And all of this was made possible by the creation of an in-memory model within Surf. So previously, as we rendered through the pages and the templates and individual web scripts, we were pushing the data straight out to the main output stream. But now we actually build up a model in memory, and this allows us, or allows extensions to actually go in and add, remove, replace sections in order to customize the output. So file customization is basically the first approach we have. It works with both templates or web scripts. For templates, you can just, when I say templates, and this refers to free marker templates. So you can customize the internationalization properties, the JavaScript controllers, and the free marker templates within a web script themselves. And the caveat to this extension process is that it relies on new custom directives that we've introduced. Although if you looked in the source code prior to 4.0, you'd have seen the region tag. Under the covers in Surf, the implementation of the region directive, the implementation of the region directive is completely changed, and we've introduced this new markup directive. And these basically act like extension points within the templates for you to actually remove them, add content before or after them, or actually replace the content within them. And these directives are actually part of this in-memory model, and it's an abstract framework which allows us to continue to add more directives in, and that's something I've actually been working on a lot recently, adding in some more directives to provide more power for customization in the future. So what can you do with file customization? you can essentially what you can do is, as I said, you can add, remove, and change component bindings. You can change the labels, and you can actually change the content that's displayed by changing the model that's produced by the JavaScript controller. And the other option, I appreciate this is slightly text heavy. I'm going to get onto the more interesting live demo shortly. The other option you have for customization is this subcomponent approach. So as I said, a subcomponent has a one-to-one mapping with a web script, and whereas components support rendering by other renderers such as JSP or just a vanilla free marker template or any other custom renderers you want to add in, subcomponents at the moment only support web scripts, which is fine for Share because Share is apart from one component is entirely produced by web scripts. And in order to provide this, we've introduced an advanced component, which is just builds on is a subclass of component, and that's the component that Share 4.0 uses. I apologize again for the overloading of the word component there. And you can change this through surf configuration. So if you really wanted to now, you could actually go in and implement your own advanced component and sort of do even more customization work you want beyond what we've done. And in order to ensure this is backwards compatible with all of the previous code, any components that Surf comes across are converted into subcomponents. So even if you've just defined what we now regard as legacy configuration, if you've defined a component in the legacy style, it will be converted into a subcomponent at runtime. And the advantage over the subcomponent approach, over the file customization approach, is that it allows dynamic evaluation. You can do coarse-grained evaluation, which I'll show you later, but for subcomponents, you've got a much finer-grained options for evaluating whether or not the changes you've configured take effect. So these evaluations, actually, I'm going to skip this, and I'll make more sense when I actually come to the live demo. So what you can do with the subcomponents, you can do similar things. You can add, remove, and modify, but this is done at a subcomponent level, so it's slightly more coarse-grained. And you can actually dynamically change what gets rendered. So a single subcomponent can effectively dynamically toggle between the web script it uses to output content based on evaluations that you configure. So all of this new code is wrapped up as modules and extensions. And again, I appreciate that modules is another overloaded term, but it was the one that fitted the bill, really. So an extension is like a broad configuration object, and that can contain 0 or more modules. And modules are deployable artifacts which can be deployed dynamically to Share. And as Share runs, it actually evaluates the modules that have been deployed, and also evaluations of the modules themselves, and it applies the configuration that they contain. There's 3 different deployment modes within Surf and Share for this. So the first is auto, which basically says any modules I find that have been configured, I'm going to deploy them. There's enable auto deploy, which is basically any modules that request to be automatically deployed will be deployed, but any that haven't won't be. And there's manual, which basically says nothing will be deployed unless it's specifically requested by the user, which in this case has to be the admin. And when you do manual deployment, you can actually change some of the configuration as you deploy it. And although modules can be they can be dynamically deployed and removed, you can do all this, as I said, without server restart, which again I'll show you shortly. So here are the benefits that we have at the moment. So you can change a lot of the coarse-grained content You can easily change the labels that are on the page, and there's plenty of scope for future enhancement with new free marker directives that we're actually creating. But the restrictions that exist in 4.0 at the moment is that it's still difficult to extend JavaScript widgets, or rather the instantiation of the client-side Java. I'll explain a little bit more about that, and if I have time at the end, I'll show you some of the latest work that we're doing to solve this problem. Also, there's limited use of the markup directive. There's some key areas where we've used it in 4.0. Again, we're going to start trying to introduce more of these markup directives or these extension points for you to hook into as we move forward. As I said, subcomponents only work with web scripts, but I don't consider that to be a major limitation. And at the moment, you have limited control over configuration overriding at deployment time for a module, but again, I wouldn't consider that to be a major limitation. Some additional tooling I should talk about. Hopefully everyone's aware of Surfbug now, but I'll give you a demonstration of that shortly. And there's also some additional dependency handling as well. You can also that's not come out very well on the screen there, but you can also configure additional dependencies to be pulled into a page. And again, I've got a demonstration for that. From something that's gone in fairly recently and will be available in 4.02 is the ability to actually define dynamic share configuration within extension modules. Normally, you'd statically declare your configuration in files like share.config, share-config XML, but now you can actually include those in modules, and they're actually, again, can be dynamically evaluated. So your configuration can change based on the context of the page you're viewing. Okay, let's get to the more interesting stuff. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my desktop, and I'm going to start providing a demonstration of what we have. So here's my Firefox browser. I've got a perfectly vanilla copy of Alfresco, and this is actually the latest community source code that I'm showing you here. At the moment, there's no modules deployed, but what I've got for the purposes of this demonstration is I've got myself a project in Eclipse called blog module. It's called blog module because a lot of the work I'm covering is actually on the blogs. And within my blog module, I've actually defined some extensions and a whole load of code that those extensions use. And what I have, so just to prove that I'm not cheating, this is my Tomcat, which is running Share. Here's my Share application, and down here you can see I've got my webinf lib directory, and it's just the standard libs. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run this little create jar option, and it's actually going to build and deploy the jar. So if I go back here, you'll see now that I have my blog demo. And then when you actually have to restart, this is one of the few times I actually have to restart Share, but because I've dropped a new jar in order for it to be picked up on the class path, I actually have to restart Share. What I should have done before I did this was actually show you that there were no modules deployed, but you'll just have to trust me on this. So there you go, Share started up. So I'm going to refresh the page. If anyone has any questions, by the way, just put them into the chat window, and I'm happy to stop as we go and answer the questions. So again, we're back into Share, and I'm going to demonstrate. Hopefully, everyone's seen the web scripts home page. This gives you lots of very useful information about. I've gone to the wrong one. Apologies. I'm running two I'm running 2 different Tomcats. So the standard development approach is to run the repository and share on 2 different Tomcats. So this is the WebScripts home for share, and within it you'll find some module deployment web scripts. I'm going to put a proper link so that you can get to this slightly more easily. But this page shows you all the modules that are deployed, and currently you can see that nothing's deployed at all. And this is the list of modules that I've got configured. And if I switch back to my Eclipse and go to my configuration, you'll see that these are all the files that all the modules that I've got configured. So say I want to add some new content into an existing share page. So the first thing I need to do is I actually need to identify the code, the area that I want to update. And this, up until the introduction of Surfbug, was a slightly tricky exercise. But again, if you go to the WebScripts home page, down at the bottom you'll see something that says Enable Surfbug. So if I click that, I get a new page telling me the status. If I now refresh Share, you'll see some nice boxes around. Some of the boxes don't fit perfectly, and that's because it absolutely positions divs over the top of components. But the idea is, as I move around, I can click on anything, and this then gives me all of the information about the component that is rendering that section of the page. So any of these boxes that are highlighted are actually represent individual components. So say what I want to do is I want to put a bit more information above the administrator dashboard title bar here. So when I click on it, I can identify the name of the component, the template, page, it's on everything about it. And the key pieces of information I'm looking for are the region ID, the source ID, and the page, because this is how I'm going to be able to target a subcomponent that I want to add some content before. So I'm going to switch back here, and I'm going to disable Surfbug, and I'm going to refresh the page. So that's gone away. And here in my module configuration, what I'm doing is I'm saying I've given it an ID, and I'm saying that I want to work with components, and the particular component that I want to work with is this title bar. And this information I've directly taken from Surfbug, and I'm saying that I want to configure some subcomponents, and in particular I want to define a new subcomponent called new content. I set an index. The default index is always 50, so anything below 50 is going to appear before it, anything after 50 is going to appear after it. And I specify a URL for some new content. This is a WebScript URL, which I have defined, here it is down here, blog demo new content. Hopefully you can see that matches there. That's the descriptor for my WebScript, and it just doesn't do anything revolutionary. It's just a simple hello world WebScript. And you can see, hopefully you saw in the structure of my jar, you have to lay out your files quite carefully. So you can see that these are defined under a WebScripts folder, which is found underneath the source within the jar. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here, but basically anything under WebScripts that maps the WebScript structure is going to get picked up. So effectively what I'm saying is I'm going to add a new subcomponent. If I now go back to my deployment and I select the new content module and I add it across and I apply the changes, once it's finished updating, you'll tell it's updated mostly because you can keep tabs on the date that gets set every time an update's made. If I now go back to my user dashboard and refresh, this is where we hope that there's no gremlins, and there we go. So hopefully you can now see that the new subcomponent's been added. So if I now switch Surfbug back on, and refresh the page, you can see that there's a new subcomponent here. It's the tells you where it's been found, the name of the name of the subcomponent. It's got all of the information there. So you can actually also, you can click down here on the web script details and actually show you all the information about that web script. So as you can see, I didn't have to restart Share at all. That was actually deployed dynamically. I can also remove it dynamically.
Dave, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So the component that you bound to there had admin in the name, right? And that I can't remember if that's the name of all global dashboards or if that changes when someone else logs in.
So you're right. This is actually that's a good point. Actually, I'll show you this a little bit. In fact, the next example covers it. So the source maps to a page, and user/admin/dashboard is a genuine page. Now, if I logged in as someone else, you wouldn't actually see it on that page. Because I can actually show you that for real. Hang on. So let me add that back in. It's a good point, actually. So the data you provide is actually will support tokens. So there's the hello world has come back up. If I log out, I think I've got another user created. Let me just try. I thought I had. No. Tell you what I'll do. Create someone quickly. I thought I'd set this up. No, okay. For some reason, I always name you have to name your characters after something. Characters, sorry, users. So mine are always named after Family Guy characters. Keeps me happy. Right, so if I now log out, you'll see that on this dashboard the data isn't applied because I'm not viewing the admin dashboard. I'm viewing Chris's dashboard. So if I now log out here again, so on the next example I'm going to show you an example of tokenization. So I sort of laboured over that one a bit because it was the first one. This one is an example of hiding. I do exactly the same thing. I'm targeting exactly the same. Well, I'm not targeting exactly the same component. I'm targeting a slightly different one. I've put the user ID within the curly braces to indicate that it's a token, and this is actually how pages are typically defined. It's what we call URI template mapping. So this time, any user ID is going to pick up these changes. And what I'm doing now is I'm targeting the default subcomponent, which because the title bar is a conversion of legacy code, it actually always gets the name default. That's the idea. It gets given when a conversion occurs. And I'm actually defining a set of evaluations. And evaluations are true if all evaluations succeed. And in this case, I have no evaluations. No evaluation properties, that is. So it's always going to render. It's going to succeed. And I set here a property that says render false, which basically says if this evaluation is true, and I'm going to do some slightly more complex ones shortly, basically says don't render the page. So the ID is hide. So if I now go back into my deployment, I'm actually going to remove that one. I'm going to select the hide one. I'm going to apply it. And then this time, when I render the page, you'll see that the title bar has now completely disappeared. Now that was for the admin. If I log out, I log back in with Chris, you'll see that it's also disappeared there as well. Let's log out again, go back in with admin. And the other thing as well I should point out is even just because I've removed just because I've removed something doesn't mean that I can't also hide the thing that I was sort of doing it relative to. So if I refresh this time, you should see that hello world is there because I've added it in relation to a subcomponent that I've then subsequently removed. So that's perfectly valid as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of hiding something. So let's go, and I'm going to sort of speed up as I go through these because I've got a lot of examples. So say we actually want to do something a bit more useful, and we want to do some conditional hiding. I want to make better use of evaluators. So this time, I am going to do exactly the same thing, except slightly differently. Sorry, I'm targeting this time the site dashboard rather than the user dashboard, and I'm going to use an evaluator, which is called blog demo evaluator. Now this actually maps to a Spring Bean. So in my Spring Bean configuration, which is here, I've added a new context. Anything that ends in hyphen context XML is going to get picked up. I've defined a couple of evaluators that exist within my class. And you can see this one I've already got open, blog demo evaluator. It extends default subcomponent evaluator. If I look at the hierarchy here, actually I can't show you that. It's actually an interface. It's actually an interface called subcomponent evaluator, which it implements. And what an evaluator does is it evaluates a set of parameters that are configured against data that can be retrieved from the context. So what this evaluator is going to do is it's going to get the name of the site, which it gets from the URI tokens, and it's going to compare it with a site parameter that's defined in the configuration. So if you go back here, I'm basically saying any site called some other site don't render that title bar. So if I now go back to my page, and I go to, let's remove both of those, let's select the conditional hide module, which I apply. And let's refresh this just to show that those have gone away. So if I go to site 1, this is what a site should look like, because nothing's been changed on it. If I go to this site called some other site, you'll see that the dashboard, so the title bar has disappeared because I've set an evaluator to actually look for that specific site name and evaluated it accordingly. So that's an example of how you can do sort of fairly straightforward evaluations, and you can actually evaluate. Sorry.
Are there out of the box that evaluator seems like it'd be a pretty useful one generically? Just
yes, there actually is a site. There actually is a site evaluator comes out of the box. That one's slightly different. I'll show you an example of a genuine out of the box evaluator. I can't remember if it's coming in later, but it's this one here. When I'll show you one a bit later on, which is actually an out of the box one. There's a few out of the box ones which we wrote for evaluating sites and users, things like that. Okay, so that's basically the options you've got, and these are kind of simple examples. You can have as many evaluators within an evaluation as you like, and as I said, they all have to succeed for an evaluation to be considered true. So again, evaluations evaluator is slightly, overloaded, and with XML it doesn't particularly help. But it is, you can build up quite complex structures. So the other way of doing this, or the other approach other than the subcomponent approach, is to customize specific files. So the way you do this, you'll see here that it's the same module ID description, but then I've got a customizations rather than a components element, and within that I specify a package that I'm targeting, and then the source of my customization. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target pretty much the same thing. I know that the the dashboard free marker template lives at org Alfresco, and I'm going to provide my own. I'm going to provide an extension to it. So here's what I want to do. It's actually, let me show you. Actually, showing you the actual original one here, dashboard. Let's make sure I get the right one. So as you see, this is dashboard STL lives at org Alfresco under the templates. And you can see here I've got a region with the ID of title, I think is what I'm changing. So I'm creating a new region called additional content, and I'm targeting the region called title, and I want to, my action is before, and the actions that are available to you are before, after, remove, and replace, and a scope, which is used for the binding of the components. So that's effectively all I'm doing. It's quite straightforward. And this actually, so I should say as well, sorry, I mustn't forget to mention this. So this is, I've actually had to define a component as well. So a new surf component called additional content. So it's globally scoped, as you can see, and it matches exactly the same web script URI that I used before, blog demo new content. So I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to put the hello world label on the screen. It's going to be done by a slightly different means. So let's remove my conditional hide. I'm going to do the add hide. It's called add hide. You'll see why, because it's actually the same customization, but I actually have to change the content of my customization to make it do the hide. So if I go back to my dashboard, you'll see we've got hello world has come back via this different means. Now, if I want to actually to hide this, I actually need to update my my dashboard evaluation. So you can see I've got one here that's commented out below. So I'm going to just change this one. So I'm targeting the title, but this time my action is remove. This is the only time I think I've got to do a restart because I'm changing the content. So I've made a change to my file. I'm redeploying my jar. I'm going to start up, restart share. And you should see, hopefully, when it starts, that my deployment configuration is still persisted because I've not changed the module configuration. So if let me just refresh this. I don't know why it's running so slowly to localhost. Okay, so to add hide region, basically the warning that's popped up here is because I hadn't provided any authentication since restarting, but this is what's previously configured, and that's still showing up. So now when I refresh here, you should see same thing. The title bar has been removed. If I take it away again, and refresh, it will hopefully come back, and there it is. So that's an approach of customizing a free marker template. Now, as I said, there's more. A web script is made up of 4 different elements, or 5 if you count the descriptor. You've got the free marker template, you've got a JavaScript controller, which can either be a JavaScript controller, it could also be a Java controller, but that's obviously easier to make changes to because it's just a Spring Bean. And you've got a properties file, which provides the internationalization labels. And you've got a configuration file. You can't target configuration files at the moment, but you can target both the the properties file and the JavaScript controller. So I'm going to do something very similar. I'm targeting, this time I'm going to be targeting the title bar itself. So whereas before I was targeting a free marker template, this time I'm targeting the template of a web script. And in my blog demo customization file, which I think I had open somewhere, maybe I haven't, blog demo, so many things down here. Okay, so So this one, because it's a web script, this is a quite an important thing to note, is it's under webscripts.blogdemo.customization, whereas the last one was under Alfresco templates blog demo customization. And that's down to the way that Surf goes looking for the different types of object. Whereas before I was customizing a template, this time I'm customizing a web script, so it has to be under the web scripts package. So this time I'm specifying user dashboard title. So again, let me just show you the actual one that exists in the share code. So user dashboard title, it's got the symbol here is to actually specify the token is for the actual user. So what I want to do is I want to change the main title. So header dashboard is now going to be changed to be customized title bar. The other key thing to note about this, and this one's very important as well, is that I've actually fully specified the built locale. So it's not just .get.properties, it's .get_en for properties, because I'm going to be using the en locale. Exactly the same thing. This won't be too much of a surprise to you this time. Deploy the module. Refresh the page, and the title's changed. And you can do that throughout the for any. So this is a very quick way of customizing labels. The only limitation to this is where tokens are passed into the property, because you can't control additional tokens being passed in without changing the actual underlying call to the label generator, if that makes sense. So if I wanted to have a whole bunch of extra token stuff here, I haven't got that. I don't have that luxury, because where header dashboard is used, in the original way it's passing in a single token, which is the user's name, which for my customization I'm choosing to ignore. If I wanted to have more tokens passed in, I don't have that option, because unless I go and change how the message, the label is called. But that's something we're looking at making an improvement to in the future as well. So the last option that we have for customizing is to actually change the JavaScript controller. And if you look on my page here, you'll see, let me customize the actual dashboard here. Let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. Dashlets. I'm going to put the web view, actually I'm going to put it at the top, the web view dashlet in here. And you can see by default, if you haven't configured anything to display, it displays nothing. It just gives you this standard, this error, not an error message, just a label saying there's nothing configured. But what I want to do is I want to say if no one's configured anything, I actually want to change it to display the Alfresco homepage, because why wouldn't you? And if again, I'll show you the original code. Obviously, and again, I'm sort of skipping over this, but every time you're following this process, you can use surfbug to identify the components that you're trying to target to get the information. So, so here's the original controller, which is quite complex, but you can see here that the JavaScript controller for a web script sets up this object called model, which basically can contain anything you like, and that object then gets passed to the free marker template, and that then pulls information out of the model for you to use. It's basically a standard MVC pattern. So the way that the JavaScript controllers work is that the default controller gets it shot, and then all the extensions can make changes to that model afterwards. So what I want to do here is the model's already been set up, and I'm looking to see whether or not it's in default mode, which it is, or it will be at the moment. And if it is, I actually change the web view title and the URI that's used, and I change it to actually say, no, it's actually not default, it's something that I want it to be. So again, same kind of stuff. Go back to my module deployment page. I'm going to remove that one. I don't have to remove these every time. I'm just doing it to keep it sort of clean. add my JS controller module in. And when I refresh the page now, you'll see that it's actually going to load up the Alfresco web page, which is trying to cram into this very small window here.
That's cool. I mean, if you wanted to do that prior to this, you would have had to copy that entire controller and then add that little snippet into the JavaScript. And then, as you were saying earlier, later when Alfresco makes a tweak to that controller, you'd have to merge that into your customization.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is about this. I mean, the controller one, for a sort of simple example, is quite a hard one to demo without doing something really complicated, because obviously unless you're and you can obviously change multiple things at once. There's no reason why I can't customize the template, the controller, the labels all in one go to just completely change it as I want to. But you can. I'm not really demonstrating this, but you can actually multiple components so modules can change the same underlying components. So say this controller here that I've configured comes in and changes the URI to be alfresco.com. I could deploy another module afterwards which changes the URI to be, I don't know, bbc.co.uk or something like that, and then its last one wins effectively, because each module is processed in its deployment order, and so the last change to the model is always going to be the winner because that got the last shot.
So the order that's dictated on that module deployment page. So if I wanted
exactly.
to,
So yes,
yeah.
So I can if I add more in, I've got the option here to sort of move things up and down as I see fit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate that I'm running low on time. I'm happy to run over if everyone else is. So I'm going to show you some of the other things that have come in here. Let's show you something that I think is quite cool that's come in. We had an internal request as part of the resource management work. They wanted to actually have configuration as part of modules now. So something we now support, and this is coming in as will be in the latest community code, community source. It's not in 4.0D, I don't believe, and it will be in 4.02 Enterprise. But it's this ability to change the way actually define configuration. So if I look at excuse me here, if I look at goes to my Alfresco instance, and I go to Alfresco here, there's a file here called Share Document Library, and within it, one of the things you can configure, excuse me, sorry, it's the options for file upload, and you can enable or disable whether or not Flash is enabled, and this actually controls the uploader that gets used. So what I want to do is I want to make this work conditionally. So I'm using one of these evaluators out of the box. This one is slightly different because this is a module evaluator as opposed to a subcomponent evaluator. That's so you'll see when I do the deployment, I get some additional options here. But I'm actually saying for a site with the name No Flash, which is built off any preset, I want to use this configuration. So I dynamically change the configuration. And what I want to do is I want to change the Adobe Flash enabled option to be false. And a very important thing to note here is that this isn't an augment. It's actually a replacement. And so I have to specify the in-memory limit as well. And this isn't any different to these normal static configuration extensions you can make. If I removed this replace equals true, it would augment, but it would augment in such a way that I'd have two Adobe Flash enabled elements, and because my one would be going in second, it would almost certainly never get picked up, and therefore it would be pointless. So something that you need to be aware of is that you need to make sure that you capture, in this case I'm actually having to copy some data, but it's fairly minimal. So if I go back to my module deployment, somewhere in here, site conditional Flash upload. Now you can see this time when I've clicked on it, I've got a whole different bunch of options here. It shows me the evaluator that's been configured, and as you can see, it's picked up the names that it's pulled straight out of the configuration. I'm not going to change anything yet. but I'll give you a demonstration of how you can actually override the defaults. So now, when I go in, go back to my site. If I go to, let's go to some other site, let's say. I go to the document library. I click on upload. This is the Flash uploader. You can see it's a Flash uploader because AdBlock is trying to block it. As you'd expect, that's just normal behavior. But if I go to this site called NoFlash, which I've created earlier, I go to the document library and I click on upload. This is the HTML5 uploader. So normally, the only way I would have been able to get these changes to take effect is if I'd stopped and restarted the server. But I can actually change this dynamically now, and I can evaluate when I want these changes to occur, which is quite powerful. Again, just changing the Flash uploader isn't rocket science, but you can do all kinds of different things. And one of the other examples, I won't bother demoing it, but it's you can do things like, for example, this one here, I'm changing the URLs based on the admin. So if the user that's logged in is the admin, I'm going to go to google.com for the help and tutorial links rather than the standard ones. Or this one I've got, if I had a site called No Aspects, I'm actually hiding all of the aspects that you can see inside. So you can actually start to do quite powerful things if you want to. All of the examples I have here are really just as simple as possible, just to try and get the point across of what you can do. But if I go back now to my site here, let's change this from being no flash to make sure I type in some other site. Now, if I update that, make sure I've got that clicked. Hopefully it's taken. So I could have changed the evaluator as well. Let's just click on that just to make sure you can see that it's picked up the change. If I now go back to some other site, which is where I was before, and the Flash loader was being used. If I do upload now, it's the HTML5 uploader, and if I go to the NoFlash site, go to the document library there, it's suddenly Flash again. So even though you've put configuration, sort of initial configuration in the config, you can actually go in and change it. So for example, if I switch it to be this default extensibility evaluator, which effectively means actually this, it basically says just always apply. Basically everything gets through. If I now go back to the site, so if I have to refresh the page, because it'll have loaded the other evaluator. Now, it doesn't matter what site I go to. Where was I? So some other site. Document library, upload. It's always the HTML5 uploader.
That's cool.
So you've got some options. I'd like to give you more options. Something I'm going to work with. I haven't really talked about this with the powers that be, but one of the reasons why this is such a simple approach is that this doesn't pull any client-side library. Obviously, Share is entirely based on UI, but this doesn't have anything on it, or it's just vanilla HTML and JavaScript. But I'm thinking about pulling something into the admin console to enable a slightly more richer way of controlling module deployment, but that's not been approved yet. It might be something I have to slip in under the covers, but I think it would be a bit of a boost to make it easier to control.
So I've seen people wanting to change, say for example, the set of aspects that they see to depending on what site they're in, and this would be one way to do that. Basically, anything in Share config, right? You can tweak.
Absolutely.
So you could tweak your forms and how your forms appear. So even for the same content types, your forms could be different depending on the site that you're in.
Exactly. Anything you see in this section of Share, as Jeff says, you can go in, you can tweak away to your heart's content. Okay, so I know the hour's up. I don't know if people want me to continue with a couple more demos, or if we need to wrap this up, Jeff.
should probably bring it to a close. But before we do that, I want to give people a chance to ask any questions that this has raised. One question that Richard Esplin brought up is back on the evaluators. If you need to do, his example is if you need to check permissions, but I would broaden that to say if you need to do anything that requires data from the repo tier, is that just up to you in your Java code?
Yeah, exactly. The nice thing about this actually came up on somebody put the comment on one of my blogs, said, "Oh, why have you used Java? It's so heavyweight for doing your evaluators." Well, one of the reasons why is because it's a Spring Bean. You can pretty much, and it's Java. You can get any of the resources, any of the other Spring Beans that exist, and also you can actually just do whatever you want. If you want to make requests out to do permissions, you're completely at liberty to do that. You can access all the services, so it's quite powerful. The two options, you get this evaluate. These evaluate methods. You get the request context, which basically has a ton of information anyway, including stuff about the user and all of the information you can get. And then the parameters are basically what you've configured to sort of, you're always comparing the context against what you've configured in your module.
Mm-hmm. So people should check the request before they decide to make that extra call back to the repo tier, because what they're looking for may already actually be in the context object.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, stuff like isAdmin and things like that, and I think there's other, there is quite a whole host of options that, unfortunately, I don't think they're documented anywhere. I think there's some on the wiki. One of the wiki pages has got quite a lot of them, but not all of them. To tell you what's in there. I mean, one of the best ways of doing it's a bit painful is to stick a debug, stick a breakpoint on and attach a debugger, and you can just see all of the information that's available. But it is quite comprehensive.
Yep. Okay. What are there any other major pieces that that you didn't have time to demo?
Let me just have a quick look through. I think those were most of the key ones. I didn't really demonstrate the adding of dependencies, which I've got down here at the bottom of the page. Again, it's basically similar to it's a variation of customization. So you still put the target. I don't think that you don't need to put the source one in actually for this, but basically any web script or template that's being processed that matches this package, it will add these additional dependencies in, and as you can see for CSS you can actually define media types as well, and if they aren't found, then you'll actually see a comment in the HTML source indicating that it couldn't find those resources. But that's, I think, the only other one. The other stuff I haven't demoed is the client side instantiation code, which is something I'm working on now. Hopefully in the next week or so, there's going to be some blogs coming out about that. It will be in the next major release of Alfresco, or for the really keen, you'll be able to start building it out of the community source.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Well, good. This was helpful. I think it's a lot to process for people who are sort of already familiar with Surf. Just grokking Surf alone is a kind of a challenge, right? So now we have these ways of extending it, which are awesome, but I think it's going to take some people a little bit of time to digest, which is why I really appreciate the work that you do on your blog and Mike and his blog. I mean, we have a lot of great blogs coming out of the engineering team. I think it's awesome. You don't see that across all software companies for sure. So we're lucky to have you guys doing that for us.
No, it's good. Well, I should say that most of what I've covered is on the blog. So the page I've put up now is the sort of root to my blogs. And as I said, I'm not the only one. There's Mike and Kev and Eric and David Webster as well. Who've got good stuff up there, and the forums as well. If you have any further questions, then put stuff on the forum and I'll try and answer it.
Yep, and I just I double checked. I did combine the Surf development with the Share development, and it's in one forum now. So there's one forum called Share Development. So hopefully people will use that forum. And let's see. I guess thanks for your time and for doing this presentation. I think it was really cool. We have one last-minute question here. Eric is asking if you will be posting this source code anywhere. We get to?
Yeah, so all of the source code I think is on the blogs. The HTML5 uploader, the actual uploader itself is something we wrote for the cloud because for all kinds of complex reasons we couldn't use the Flash uploader. So the HTML5 uploader is in the community, but it's not in Enterprise. But it will be obviously in the next release.
All right, good. Hope that answers your question, Eric. And let's see, our next Tech Talk Live will be next month. We do this on the first Wednesday of every month, and the next one is on records management. So that should be pretty cool. That's Wednesday, June 6th. So definitely watch the events page so you can sign up for that. Get your DevCon abstracts in. Dave, have you submitted you've submitted some DevCon talks, right?
I've got some ideas. They're coming shortly. I haven't written them up yet.
All right. Well, you've got a few more weeks.
Okay.
And everybody else, get yours submitted, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Okay, thank you.